Hey there, my name is Miranda and welcome to another video. So today, since I'm home and I actually have access to my books again, I decided to do a top 10 old favorites. What I mean by old favorites is that these are books that no matter how many years have passed, I still love them. They might not be constantly mentioned as my favorites, I might not put them in an actual top 10 list, but they are books that no matter how many years it's been, I always find myself wanting to reread them. So these are some old favorites of mine, and maybe a couple might be yours as well. Quickly though, I am not including any books by my favorite authors, Lisa C. and Robin McKinley, as I just love all of their books, and there are still some I've yet to read, and quite frankly, I love their books pretty equally, and they almost deserve a list of their own. I also will not be including the Harry Potter series, as almost everyone my age has some sort of connection to them in some way, shape, or form, whether they read them themselves, they know someone who's read them, or they know of a lot of it. Alright, so let's begin. This is not in any particular order. The first book I'm going to mention, though, is my favorite book of all time. I adore this book. It is my favorite. I'm constantly rereading it, even if it's just little sections of it. And that is Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. This is my old copy. My mother bought it for me from a secondhand bookshop after I watched the 1995 movie starring Colin Firth. I loved it. I wanted to read it. She no longer had her copy, so she bought this for me. I have since purchased a new copy in the UK. This is an all-time favorite. I absolutely adore this story. I adore the characters. Everything about this book, I adore it, and it's a very comforting read to me. I know this book almost inside and out. I almost always want this book on me because I just have sudden moments when I need to read bits and pieces of it. I just need to flip through it. I just need to reread sections. I don't even need to reread the entire book. I just need to reread just little bits and pieces of it because it's comforting to me. Therefore, this is my favorite book of all time and the first one I'm going to mention. The next one I'm going to mention is actually a manga series. It is a fantasy series. It has 14 volumes. It is no longer in print, which I'm still very upset about as I do not have all the volumes and I can no longer find the volumes I need. So essentially me showing it is also in hopes that maybe more people will start reading it and that will mean they'll start printing it again so I can get the rest of my volumes. And that is From Far Away by, Kyoko Hikawa. This is not a very well-known manga series. It is from the 1990s, but I absolutely adore this. It is my all-time favorite manga series out of every manga I've ever read, and I have read a few. This book follows a young girl by the name of Noriko, where after a bit of a mishap one day, she ends up in a fantastical world where she is a being known as the Awakening who can awaken the Sky Demon. Yes, very creative naming, I know, it's fine. One of my favorite things about this book is that, one, it isn't heavily focused on romance, which is something that's very common in a lot of fantasy books. So the fact that this one is not is amazing to me, more so because it's a manga. I know this is going to sound harsh, but a lot of mangas put a lot of focus on romance. The air conditioning is turned on, so I have a pretty good idea that you're hearing it in this video, and I'm so sorry. Anyway, moving on. The other thing I love about this book is I think it's rather realistic. One of the things I think is most realistic is when Noriko arrives in this world, instead of there being a magical explanation as to why she can suddenly understand the language, she has to learn it entirely on her own by listening to people. And it is hilarious. So again, this is another feel-good series for me. I love it. It puts a smile on my face. It makes me laugh. And I recommend this to anyone who enjoys reading manga. I recommend reading this series because it is a beautifully written series. It has great characters. It has a great storyline. And I also would just like more people to read this and maybe it will become super popular again. Yes, I'm a little devious in recommending this. The next book on my list is one that I actually do believe a lot of people should read. However, because of how triggering the content in it is, I wouldn't recommend it to people who have been through similar experiences. And that book is Speak by Laurie Hale Anderson. Like I said, I think this book is very important as it is about a girl who is sexually assaulted and then refuses to speak afterwards. It is a very heavy topic. If anyone is uncomfortable with it, I have found that Just Listen by Sarah Dessen is very similar, as it does deal with a similar trauma, just not to the extent that it is in Speak. But as I said, I think this is a very important book. I really think a lot of people should read it. And that is why it's an all-time favorite of mine, not even because I find comfort in it, but because I think it is a very important book, and it's one that I enjoy rereading, because even though it's a difficult book, it is a thought-provoking book. Therefore, it is a favorite of mine. I definitely do not reread it a lot, unlike a lot of the other books I have, but it is one that's still very near and dear to my heart. Alright, last couple standalone books, then we'll get to the series. So the next book I have, and this is a book recommended to me by a friend, and it is a favorite of mine. I adore it. I am looking forward so much to another book by this author that's sort of similar in some way. It's a retelling as well, and that is Uprooted by Naomi Novik. This book follows a young girl whose village, every 10 years, a girl is chosen by the dragon, a magician who lives in a tower right by this village. He chooses a girl every 10 years to go and live in the tower with him. Nothing bad happens to her. She comes out after her 10 years. She's even given a massive dowry, and she usually moves far away and becomes a very fun person, a very interesting person. She's wealthy and everything. But the village still doesn't like it. And the main character is a girl who is part of the selection that will be picked. And when she is picked, she is in shock as everyone, herself included, had decided her best friend was going to be chosen instead. You later find out there was a specific reason as to why she was chosen, and you also find out more about why the dragon chooses these girls every 10 years. I love this story. I've heard some people say they don't like the magic system in it, or they don't like the writing, or whatnot. I love this book, however. I adore it, and I highly recommend giving it a chance, if nothing else. If you don't like it, I understand. No one is the same. But I love this book. It is a favorite of mine. I love just rereading again sections of it. I'd love to do a full reread of it before I read Spinning Silver, but I don't know when that's going to happen. But this is an old favorite of mine. It hasn't been that many years since it came out, but enough that I'm going to put it on my top 10 old favorites list. The next book on my list is Stolen by Lucy Christopher. This is, again, same with Speak, not exactly a comforting book for me, but this is an extremely thought-provoking book for me. This book is essentially a long letter by a girl to her captor after she was held captive by him in the Australian outback. I'll be honest, when I first read this book, I was extremely starry-eyed about it, extremely hyper-romantic about it, but after so many years, and after looking at it again, rereading bits of it again, I have different ideas about it, but I still love it. This is a book that no matter how many times I think about it, how many times I reread parts of it, or even all of it, I still kind of look at it with new eyes each time. My ideas change about it, my emotions change about it, everything that I think about it will change with almost every reread of this. And because of that, it is on my top 10 old favorites list. The next one is a very not known book. In fact, I only found out about this book by accident, and that is The Hittite by Ben Bova. So this isn't, from what I understand, a very well-liked or well-received book by many people, but I adore this book. So this book is essentially a retelling of the Battle of Troy, but it's through the eyes of a Hittite general. Him and his troops have arrived in Troy. Their entire civilization has essentially been dismantled, demolished, destroyed by some invaders, and he arrives in Troy seeking out his wife and children. While there, he becomes an ally of the camp of Odysseus. He ends up joining in the battles. He also ends up meeting a lot of very prominent figures from the legend of Troy. So of course he meets Odysseus, he meets Agamemnon, he meets Menelaus, he meets Paris, he meets Achilles, he meets Helen. And I love this. I think it's fun. I am a classics student. I study the Iliad, I've studied the Battle of Troy, I've studied some archaeological research from that area, but either way, I love this retelling. I think it's very interesting. I think it's just cool and fun. I also love the Hittite civilization, so the fact that the Hittites are brought in with this book, I think it's fascinating. So while probably extremely historically inaccurate, it is a fun read for me, and I love it. This is an example of how I'm able to separate my schoolwork from my reading in some instances. Granted, it could be because I already know the Battle of Troy. The Iliad is very much a mythology rather than historical, so I'm probably able to read this because I view it as such. Alright, so leaving the standalones in one manga, I am now on to my series. The first one I want to mention, and this is a very old favorite of mine, I read the first book and it did take me a couple years to then read the next books. No matter what though, I love the series as a whole. I think it's marvelous and wonderful. And that is The Blue is for Nightmare series by, how do you say it? Lori Faristolars? Oh god. I apologize if I mispronounced that. So I do also own... Oh, hi, there's a cat. Oh god, that door scared me. Oh god, that scared me. Oh, he's just wandering around, the little monster. What are you doing? I don't know what he's doing. So quickly, I do own all 4 books, but the 4th book is upholding the tradition of keeping my camera up, so it's... yeah. This series follows a young woman who is in, I'm pretty sure she's in college, if I remember correctly. It has been a couple years. But she's in college and she's a witch. And she has these horrific nightmares of people being murdered, and her nightmares always involve some sort of physical reaction from her. So like in one book, she vomits. But these dreams eventually come true, and she's still haunted by one that happened when she was a couple years younger, and because she didn't pay attention to the dreams enough, somebody died. The first book, she's having the dreams, and this time they involve her best friend, and she's determined to not let history repeat itself. The following books, similar things happen, but they each change and they involve different people. And eventually you also meet another witch, and it is great. Oh hey, I have a cat. I have a cat now. I have a cat now. Come on. Come on. Come on, Trouble. Ooh, I got him. He's not going to be too happy with me after this, but I got him. Oh, poor kitty. Okay. He already left me. Okay, that's fine. Anyway, back to the books, and now I'm covered in cat hair. But I love this series. I think it's a lot of fun. I think it's entertainment, and they're just really easy, quick reads for me, which is another reason I love them, because sometimes you just need that quick and easy, comforting read. The next series is The Abandoned Trilogy by Meg Cabot, the 3rd book I am currently lending out to a friend. This is a retelling of the Persephone myth, and of the 2 YA Persephone myth retellings I've read, this one and The Goddess Test, this is my favorite. I love these books. I know they're very slow. They essentially take place over a very short period of time for the amount of books that there are, but I don't mind when books are that slow. I love the setting of these books. I love the reimagining of this myth because it is one of my favorite myths. I think it's a well-written series. I enjoy it immensely. I always want to reread it. I'm constantly feeling like just this need to reread this series. Because of that, it is on this list. And honestly, I highly recommend anyone who enjoys retellings of Greek myths to please give this trilogy a try. It might disappoint you, but it could also end up being a favorite. The second last series that's part of my top 10 all favorites is the Paranormalcy trilogy by Kiersten White. So Kiersten White is the author of the And I Darken series, which is the reimagining of Vlad the Impaler as a girl. Super excited to read it, and it's mainly because of this series. This is actually her first published series, and it is an old favorite of mine. I adore it. And same as the Abandoned trilogy, I'm constantly feeling a need to reread these. Mostly because it brings me great joy, and the main character reminds me of one of my best friends, so I have a lot of fun reading this book because of it. So these books follow a young girl by the name of Evie, and she has the ability to see through the glamour of fantastical creatures. So vampires, she sees past their glamour and sees the corpse underneath. Fairies, she sees past their glamour and sees that they're fae. And that is extremely valuable, so she's essentially made into a international agent in order to find these supernatural creatures and stop them, tag them, bag them, all that stuff. However, in the first book, she starts to realize there might be something more going on, and she decides to find out what's going on for herself and learns more about who she is in the process. But as I said, this is an all-time favorite of mine. I adore it. I have so much fun reading it every time I read it. I did forget what happened in them for quite a while, so I had to reread them, and then when I remembered, I was just at a moment of, I remember why I love this. And that's, I think, a favorite feeling of mine when I forget what happens in a book, and as I reread it, I just suddenly remember why I enjoy it so much, and I get those feelings while reading these books. And the last all favorite, and I'm pretty sure most people that know me would see this coming, it is all of my Lord of the Rings stuff. Yes, I am including Silmarillion, it is Tolkien, but to be fair, while I love Silmarillion and Beren and Luthien is my favorite story, the original trilogy is probably my favorite. Again, same with a lot of the other series I've been talking about, I feel a need to reread these constantly because I love them so much. And also, while a lot of people usually have a favorite, a book or the movie, I actually love both equally because they are different. There's a lot in the movies that they changed from the books. There's a lot that they did not bring from the books into the movies, and because of that, I love them equally. I get probably a little bit more entertainment watching the movies, but I get more of almost everything else out of the books. I love this series. I adore it. I'm a Tolkien fangirl. This is me. I love reading it. I love watching it. I'm always looking forward to reading Tolkien. I'm a little upset there will be no more coming out. But for my firm top 10 old favorites, I'm going to put the original Lord of the Rings trilogy, because even though it hasn't been that many years since I first read them, I definitely want to do a reread almost, I don't know, every 2 months I probably have an idea that I want to reread it. So even though it hasn't been that long since I first read these books, I want to reread them a lot. Probably a little bit more than some of the others. But again, like a lot of these old favorites, they're books I love so much that I want to reread them. I want to go back to these familiar worlds, these familiar characters. I want to revisit them. I want to go on the adventures with them again. Because even though I know the stories, no matter what, I enjoy them every single time. So that's been my list of my top 10 old favorites. Now that I am home and I could actually access my bookshelf to share these books with you and actually be able to show you the physical copies rather than just mention what the titles are and who they're by. Yeah, it's kind of fun being able to do that. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up. If any of these books are some old favorites of yours or any that you're very interested in, maybe leave a comment down below. I'd love to hear about it. And if you want to see more videos by me, both bookish and travel related, please be sure to click that subscribe button down below. And I'll see you next time. Bye!